welcome to Closet Conversations. Today I will be discussing Season 1, Episode 2 of Girl Boss, the series on Netflix based on the book by the same name, written by Sophia Amoruso, the founder and CEO of Nasty Gal, formerly known as Nasty Gal Vintage. It was a #1 bestseller, and I'm here to talk about this series and all of the wonderful points that it makes and for resellers and the key things that we should all be thinking about as we develop our business. Sophia went on to develop Nasty Gal Vintage into nastygal.com, a website that went on to, I think the revenues were as high as $100 million before venture capitalists swooped in, sort of took over, wanted to help her scale her business, and in the end, they ended up pretty much destroying it. But that's a really sad part of the story. But the great part of the story is the part of how she builds her business that's on Netflix. And I'm going to talk about Season 2. Now, I did start a petition on change.org trying to get signatures so that this series can be renewed. It only had one season, which is a huge disappointment for me as a reseller, because reselling has never been hotter than ever. This book is so important. It has so many wonderful takeaways and reminders of the important aspects of reselling and key things we can do to be successful. The Netflix series is pretty much I'll call it a teenage angst series, because they really focus on the dynamics of a young 23-year-old. It's all mixed in together with how she builds her empire. The series gets off track because it is, quote, loosely, quote unquote, based on the book and not the actual book. So they take a lot of creative license in this series, which may be why it didn't get renewed. But be that as it may, I've recently been binge watching it, and it is something that I wanted to bring to your attention because I'm just getting so much out of it. And it's a great reminder of what to do to be a successful reseller. And the takeaways are as relevant today as they were when this series were made, as they were back in 2006 when she was building her business. So, I'm going to talk about Season 2. Now, Season 1. We're talking about Season 1, Episode 2. So, if you heard my previous podcast, where we left off is the character, Sophia Amoruso's character by a slightly different name in this series, had come across an East-West vintage jacket from the 1970s that she had posted on eBay at auction. It's now the next morning. She's woken up after her, epiphany about putting this up for sale. The price of the jacket is now $485, and she's jumping up and down for joy, dancing around in her apartment, saying things like to herself, like, I'm a genius, I just figured out life, and she's just so excited. And in doing that, she pulls a groin muscle, and that's a key part of the series. And so that happens because she's dancing around her apartment. But nonetheless, she's still saying, I can do this forever. I can now pay my rent all from the comfort of my apartment. I never have to get a job again. So she is just thrilled. And then she's like, the next step is, and she's very clear about this, I need to find a way to get more cool stuff to sell. And I don't want to wait for that auction money to come in. So she's telling a friend of hers who's over there listening to her. And she's like, okay, I got $21.64. And I want to see if I can dig up 2 more overlooked pieces. Then that's $1,200. So she's banking on the fact that she can find 2 more pieces, as she calls them, overlooked, like the East-West jacket, that will sell for over $600, that she can pay. She's got $21. So if she paid $9 for the jacket that's now selling at $600, she can certainly find 2 more at that price. So that's a key thing right there. She's like realizing she's onto something. She's found some very rare vintage, and it's selling at $600 based on a $9 investment. So, that's kind of her frame of reference. That's her bar that she has set for herself. So anyway, she's busy talking to her friend in this episode, and her friend's like, you found something you love to do that you're actually doing. But she kind of says it in a way like that she's surprised because Sophia, as we've learned from episode 1, is a little bit lost and she's really trying to figure out who she is. And so her friend is kind of cautiously optimistic that this selling thing is going to work for her. And you can tell that. But nonetheless, the next scene is Sophia is leaving her apartment and you find her going around looking and sourcing. So they show Wasteland. The storefront looks a little different than the Wasteland we know today because this is back in 2006. They show her going in there and she's looking around, and all she finds is a Will You Marry Me t-shirt. And she's just like, okay, moving on because there's nothing in there. So she goes to the next stop, another buy-sell trades place, and she can't find anything. Then she goes to a third place, and they have a skirt for $50, and she says, "Well, you take 20 because she only has $21." And the lady's like, "Nope, that's what it's priced. It is what it is." And she won't take less, and she has to pay that. So she's like, "You mean I just spent 2 hours of my life going through all these crappy clothes, and you won't even discount the price?" And the woman's like, "Well, that's what vintage is, a bunch of crappy clothes." And so, repeat. And then she ends up at Regeneration Vintage, and this is the same place she had been in episode 1, and the same guy is in there that she had bought this $9 jacket from. So by the time she gets in there, she's angry, she's frustrated, she's going through the clothes, and she's mumbling, "I've seen better clothes at a Rite Aid, and this stuff is cheap, and it's horrible, and everything's too expensive, blah, blah, blah." So she ends up talking to the owner, and he's like, "What's your problem? What's going on over here?" And she's like, "I need to get stuff. I need to get stuff. I need to get stuff to sell because I've started reselling clothes online." And he looks at her and he's like, You think you're responsible enough to run a business?" And he's like laughing at her and mocking her. And you can see that she's being very strong, and she's like, "Oh, this isn't a business. It's a lifestyle." And these are all things that are hilarious because as resellers, it really is a lifestyle, right? So she's like, "This isn't a business. This is a lifestyle." And, he's like, "Oh, you think you're responsible enough to run a business?" So this is 2 times in one day. Her friend didn't think she was responsible enough. And now this guy doesn't think she can handle it. So he's laughing at her. And, then he goes on to make some really important points. He goes, "You think you're actually someone who can support themselves with a full time with a business?" He's like, "It takes more than you lucking into finding a few pieces here and there, a few acorns," he calls it. You've got to know more than that." And she's like, "Well, hey, remember that jacket I bought from you? I flipped it for over $600 online." And then he was like, "Oh." And she's like, "Well, maybe I know exactly what I'm doing." And then he makes the point, this whole episode 2 really lays it out for resellers. He's like, "You think you know exactly what to do." And he goes, "Well, how much time have you spent looking for new inventory to sell? And how much have you found?" He goes, "What do you know about overhead and online marketing and shipping and customer complaints and returns?" And she's like, she gathers her thoughts. She goes, "Well, I know plenty." And of course, she'd worked at the shoe place and other retail jobs, so she does know about this stuff. And he says, "Well, maybe you've found your acorn, but you can't make a living at this. Someone like you can't make a living at this." And I was like, whew, And she's like, "Okay, go ahead. Underestimate me. It's just what I want because I feed off of that." And she says, "The truth is I'm smarter than you think. I have good instincts. I have common sense. I've got it all figured out." And so she storms out. And let me tell you, it was such a powerful scene because it basically goes over everything. One, sourcing. Okay. And what she knew from the beginning is that she found something super rare that sold for $600 that she paid $9 for. She didn't find a Gap t-shirt. And so this whole thing started with her finding these super rare, valuable pieces, valuable to the right people, right? The people, it's a special group of people who are looking for rare vintage and that are willing to pay a premium for it. And that was the niche she fell into, right? And so this is her frame of reference. This is the bar that she set for herself. So the point is driven home very clearly. One, she went all over town to 4, 5, 6 different places. Didn't buy anything because one, she only had $21 to spend, but she couldn't find anything she could flip that was in her price range. And so you have to think about how much time you're spending sourcing, right? And you also have to know about returns. You have to know about marketing. You have to know about customer service. You have to know about shipping. This is absolutely true. You have to know about all these things. But I'm still taken by the fact that she did not buy anything. She didn't buy anything. She tried to buy a couple, this one skirt, but they weren't budging. But like, she spent all day and couldn't find anything and went to 4, 5, 6 different places. And so therein was the issue. She woke up saying, I got to find more stuff to sell. She spent all day. She couldn't find anything. So obviously that's an aspect of this is she's going to have to find a way to solve, right? And she's just pissed off enough and angry enough to try to solve it on her own because she's got the fuel because she's been underestimated by her girlfriend and now this man in the store who really doesn't think she has it in her. And so this is a really, really important point because we have to be mindful of sourcing. It is, to me, the one big issue everybody is struggling with. But if we look at the Sophia Amoroso model, she's looking for rare vintage, period. She wants to spend $10 and flip it for $600. So that's her model. That's her frame of reference. And so now she's got to figure out how she's going to do that. Because that's what she knows, right? She doesn't know how to flip anything else. This is not on her mind. She's not thinking about flipping Gap for a few dollars. And, she's thinking about the vintage. So all important stuff in the beginning. So the next scene, you find her going to a bookstore to get the eBay for Dummies book. Okay, remember this is 2006. The book cost $24.95. She only has $21, so she doesn't have any way to buy this book. And also, it doesn't seem like a good way to spend her money because that $21 could get her potentially $1,200 worth of sold vintage if she would invest into that and not into the book. But she knows she needs the book. She knows she needs to learn and get some help because the guy has pointed this out to her and she's smart enough. She's got, as she said, good instincts and common sense. She knows there's a hole in her knowledge because he pointed out to her, you didn't buy anything today. So anyway, she ends up stealing the book. We won't go into all that because that's part of the old drama of the series is watching her try to steal this book. In the end, she gets the book. And she gets home and she's going through the book. And it's so funny because they show her the first part where they said, wealthier neighborhoods will have better items than mid to lower income neighborhoods. And she's like, duh. And then they go on to talk about it. And then she has this epiphany. She's like, oh, wait. They're talking about going to estate sales and yard sales to source. And she's like, I really am stupid. So she puts the book down, runs outside and gets the penny saver. And the penny saver, if you don't know about it, used to be like a printed little paper magazine that would come around and they would have all kinds of want ads and things in it and advertisements and things like that. So she ran down to get the penny saver. She pulls it out. Brings it back upstairs and goes through the section on estates. And so you see her typing in the addresses for the different estate sales. And like one that pops up says War Hero. So she's like, oh, that's not a good one. Another one pops up and it says retired teacher for the blind. And she's like, oh, that's not a good one. Then this third one comes up and it says Rita with some fancy last name. Former hairdresser that married an investment banker who quit her job to do charity work. And she's like, oh, that's the one I want to go to, right? Because and they show her envisioning Rita, who they said went to was top San Francisco, elite and always was at all the functions. And she's like, that's my closet. That's the closet that's going to have what I need. And so she notices there's 27 minutes left to the sale when she read the ad. So the scene shows her rushing out of her apartment, driving to the estate sale, parking in front of a hydrant, running inside, asking where the master bedroom is. She runs up there, walks into the humongous closet, and it's empty. It's completely empty. And she's just like, oh, And then she sees this woman walking out, this grown woman. And I'd say the woman has to be in her 50s, and this character is in her early 20s. And she goes, oh, is that all the clothes? She goes, oh, yes, this was Chanel. That it's all Chanel, that it doesn't even fit, but I have to have it. And she goes, oh, well, I think I left some Chanel in here. And the character woman goes, you do know there's a grown woman standing here. Just like, what are you talking about? So she tries to grab the Chanel items out of her hands, and she's like, riffraff. And I just thought that was hilarious, because she's calling her riffraff because she's in this estate sale. And yet here she is buying the same stuff, right? But doesn't consider herself riffraff. It's so funny. So anyway, she ends up eyeing and finding a trunk in the corner, and she tries to pull it out, and of course falls to the floor because it pulls this um, hernia and activates it on her body, that where she had pulled it from jumping around. And so she falls to the floor, and the guy at the estate sale finds her, and in the end they open up the trunk, and he says, I'll let you have all this stuff in here for $20 because we never inventoried it. I didn't see the trunk. She goes, well, I'll give you $10. So for $10, she gets all this, one giant bag full of winter clothing from the estate sale, and a tip from the guy who's basically said, you got to get this looked at, whatever it is you're dealing with, because Rita would want that, So she leaves. This sale, and she goes to the special free clinic to get it looked at, and the doctor basically says, you have a hernia, and she says, well, how much does it cost to fix something like that? And he goes, $3,000 to $5,000, and she's like, well, I don't know, I have to get a job. And he's like, yeah, well, most people, pay for it through their health insurance from their work. And she's like, oh, okay. So she leaves, and she's very frustrated because she's very frustrated because she doesn't want to get a job. That's the whole point of the reselling, is she doesn't want to get a job. But the guy's like, if you want this fixed, it could really be something bad for you. So her character's like, So she leaves frustrated, and then she comes out, and then she can't move her car, and she gets a ticket, and she's blocked in because cars have parked too close to her. So then she's even more frustrated, and then she grabs the clothes out of her trunk and walks home in the rain. And you see her when she gets home. This guy that she'd met in a bar was basically there at her door to greet her, and she's just all sad, crying, frustrated, because she felt like she was making some forward motion by buying the book and realizing that she could source at garage sales, but in the end, all these things happened to block her, and to frustrate her, in that she was late, she didn't get the good stuff. She has to have this surgery. She gets a ticket. It's just, the culmination of things. And so in the end, you see her character saying, life has got to be better than this. It just does. And that's kind of where they leave you. And I thought it's a super interesting and a bit heavy. It ends, but very solid episode 2, where you really get into the core of this reselling, is that you've got to find the good stuff, and you've got to find it on a consistent basis, and you've got to find more than one unicorn. And to do that, you've got to go to an environment where there are quantities of good stuff. And so the estate sale, yard sale aspects are great ways of getting a lot of stuff at once. And so this is something that we all need to remember in terms of sourcing. Thrift shops are great. Buy-sell trade places are great. But if you want to target and get a lot of the same type of clothing, shoes, and accessories from one place, estate sales are perfect for that. And there's plenty of ways these days to find out how to get them, like estatesales.net online, and your local newspapers, Craigslist. It's easy to find sales, but it's so competitive now. You've really got to find out about them ahead of time and go early, to get the best selection. So that was episode 2. And I just think the key takeaways from this one, key takeaway number one is you've got to find a way to source what you're going to sell. And you've got to find a way to source it where you can get more than one item, where you're not wasting time, you're not wasting hours. When you've got to find a more direct approach to use your time to be more efficient, you've got to know how to sell and know all the business aspects about it, the marketing, the returns, the customer service. There's all that aspect to it that are going to be super important. You're also going to need to build relationships. And so in this episode 2, you see her building her relationship with this man who's, first of all, he doesn't believe her. Second, he's pretty shocked at how much she has sold the jacket for. And so he's pretty much doubting her ability because, here he is running a store like this where he could be doing something like that and he isn't. And so, people underestimating you can be big fuel. And I think another important point is that reselling is a lifestyle. I mean, this is something that is a very different way to work. It's a very different thing to do. Certainly, if you're full-time, it's a very different lifestyle. But, part-time, it's a very different way to spend your time. And, but she loves it. I mean, in the beginning of season 1, episode 2, she's dancing around. She just thinks, she's just imagining doing this for the rest of her life. This is just so thrilling, and it's incredibly thrilling when you source something very low and sell it for very high. I mean, that is a thrill. That is adrenaline like nothing else. And so really, really great for them to make that point. And so, yeah, those are some of the key takeaways. And we have to go back to some of the points that I made in the first podcast on this, is that she's very, very selective. And if that's the one thing that I can continue to drive home that really hits me so hard, is how selective she is. And, I am telling myself to be more selective all the time, and it is so difficult. And so I found myself going to an estate sale today, and I have to tell you about what happened. You're not going to believe this. And so we've pretty much finished up all about the episode 2. I've put the link to go to change.org where you can vote on the petition to have season 2 out there directly on my Instagram page on the link tree. That way you can find it. Someone tried to find it earlier, and if you search on Girl Boss, it's so buried in the search it's hard to find. But the direct link to it is on my Instagram page for Jennie Girl's Closet. That'll help you out. But I have to tell you what happened today. This is incredible. So every now and then, synchronistic events will happen in my life that really are mind-blowing. I've started writing them down because you just can't believe it. You really can't. So I had been on estatesales.net, and I had been thinking about going to estate sales because obviously I'm binge watching this series. I'm being reminded to do that. And I have not been to one estate sale in since I've been in California, and I've been here 5-6 years. Like, I haven't been because I was busy running my consignment shop, and all the prime times that you would be in a estate sale, I'm in my own consignment shop. So that is why I've never gone. I've been to a few random yard sales I passed on the road, but not any true estate sales. And so I was thinking about it, and I was on estatesales.net, and I was looking around, and I happened to find this online estate sale, and it was all this office furniture, and I'm like, I do not need any office furniture. And I'm scrolling through, and there's mirrors, and there's computers, and all this, and then I see this mannequin, and it's one of these, it's not even a mannequin, it's a dress form. It's a dress form by Royal, and I actually have 2 Royal dress forms that I bought from when Loehmann's went out of business in New York City, because I was living there at the time, and I had shopped the going out of business sale. It is one of these memories I will never, ever forget. But I did buy a number of fixtures. And so I knew what the Royal dress form was. They're super expensive. They're like $1,000 if you have like certain ones. This one was probably not $1,000 version, probably like a $600 version. Like it's slightly lesser than the one I have. I don't know if because it's newer or what. It was slightly different. So I don't think it's a $900 version, but it could be. So it looked brand new. It didn't have one bit of dirt on it. And I was able to buy this dress form for $100. And I've been needing more dress forms for my showroom, and this allows me to photograph 3 items now instead of just 2, because I only have 2 dress forms. And so anyway, I bought this thing, and a friend of mine took me today into Silver Lake to pick it up. And so before we went, I'm trying to get the address and trying to figure out where it is. So I'm plugging in the address from the receipt where I bought this online. And it says, Girl Boss. I'm like, what? I'm like, why does it say Girl Boss? Is that like, did I type something in? And so I looked again, and it said Girl Boss was at this address. I'm like, what? And so girlboss.com, the organization that was created after Nasty Gal was sold. I mean, that's all. We haven't even gotten to that. Nasty Gal was sold off. Sophia Amoroso was out of a job. Venture people sold the name to some UK company, and they shut down the few retail stores they had, and everything shifted in that story, which is, we're so far from the ending of the story to even get into it. But she went on to create Girl Boss Network and the Girl Boss movement, and this was their headquarters. I had no idea. I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, what are the chances that the mannequin I would buy is from the Girl Boss headquarters? Because she had sold Girl Boss, I read an article, in December of last year. So here it is 6 months later, and they're liquidating what's in this office. So we went, and sure enough, it's the Girl Boss headquarters with Girl Boss everywhere, Girl Boss swag, Girl Boss books, all this stuff. I got my mannequin, which was great. And then while I was there, I bought a few more things. I bought a hanger rack and some clear storage bins. I don't know. I've just bought some books and blah, blah, blah. I don't know, just all kinds of little things. I bought a label printer, and I think I bought a Shure microphone that was brand new in the box. Like all this stuff, right? So we just couldn't believe that of all of the places this mannequin was from, because it's anonymous online, right? You buy online, all you see are pictures. You don't know where you are, where you're going, and to end up at the Girl Boss old headquarters was absolutely stunning. And so I just wanted to share that with you, because the chances of that are like 0 to 0, like 0.0000001. But you know, this is I've manifested it, and I didn't even know I was doing it. So yeah, I just have to tell you that. So that happened, and I took some pictures inside. So I have a couple pictures where it says Girl Boss of their logo and stuff like that. So I'm going to be putting those on Instagram at some point. But I just want to let you know that after all of this podcasting and all of this thinking about it, I end up buying a mannequin from Girl Boss. Okay, so that was it. So that was fun. So anyway, if you like the podcast, please give it 5 stars, and if you give it some comments, it helps in search. If you want to get in touch with me, and several people got in touch with me after the last podcast, I am more than happy to answer any questions you have. Please be in touch with me on Instagram at JennieGirl's Closet. If you want to help out and see if season 2 can be created for Girl Boss, definitely sign the petition. If you have not bought this book and you have not watched the series, I highly recommend it. There's so many good things in there. You will see yourself in this girl. And, again, my one complaint is that they really focus on the girl angst. And I really don't want to see that, because I've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. I just want to see what's happening with the reselling and all these good practices that Sophia Amoroso put into place to become this $100 million company. And so it's solid stuff. Everything she's doing, there's not one thing that she's doing or that she does that's out of place or not effective. And so this is the thing, is that all these things they added up to create this incredible company this is available for any of us. Any of us, if we put our minds to it, can build and build and build our businesses. And we need to constantly be inspired by people who've done it. And so, to me, this woman is the person who inspires me the most out of anyone I have heard about, seen a video on, know about. She is the single most inspiring person to me that I have ever witnessed for this kind of work and the future of reselling. And what every one of us has the potential to do is to create $100 million business. It doesn't happen overnight, but you got to put solid things in place, and you got to take it seriously and you've got to learn from the people who've done this. You cannot learn from people who haven't done it. And that's the thing. There's so many well-meaning people out there, but show me the one who's made $100 million doing reselling. That's the one you can learn from the most, because they've done it. And all of this other information is terrific, but it's limited. It's limited scope. It's limited frame of reference. It's limited to what they know and what they've experienced. But what this woman, Sophia Amoros, has done to me is the most amazing story I have ever heard of in reselling. And so that means if this is the most inspiring story in the last 10, 15 years, then who's going to be that person who takes her place? Who is going to be that person who steps in and becomes the next nasty gal? Hopefully it's JennieGirl, but we'll see. We'll see who gets there first. And that's it. This is Jennie Walker with Closet Conversations. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to having you with me on a future episode. If you like the song at the beginning, it's called Black Hat, written and recorded by Jennie Walker and Tommy Farragher. It's from the album Night Flight to London, available on iTunes worldwide now.